December 8th, 1987. Presidents Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev convene at the White House to sign what is known as the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. So it's hard to overstate the importance of this event. Years of hostility, animosity, nuclear tension culminate in this day, this agreement, with these two powerhouses in this room, which most experts will point to as the beginning of the end of the Cold War. So right before Ronald Reagan sat down to sign this agreement, what he did was he uttered three famous words. These three famous words you guys are all familiar with. And those three words changed the world. Those words, obviously, are trust but verify. Now, I don't think he could have ever imagined how much impact that these three words could have made, because they were everywhere. They spread like wildfire. They were everywhere from military platoons. You could overhear them in classrooms and in high schools. You could see them in corporate boardrooms. They even ended up on T-shirts and mugs. Trust but verify was absolutely everywhere. But it wasn't a passing meme. What trust but verify was a worldview that seemed to become embedded in American culture. So I asked the question, why? Why did these three words become so popular in our culture? And I think the answer is because it sounds like a great deal, right? And if there's one thing Americans love, it's a great deal, right? It's like the all-you-can-eat buffet, irresistible to man, woman, and child, right? And what the great deal is with trust but verify is this implication, which is that you get all the benefits associated with trust, but you get to limit the downside through this thing called verify. Now, as Milton Friedman will tell you, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And what I will tell you today is there's no such thing as trust but verify. It is a ridiculous notion. It's a myth. It's a fallacy. You have trust, you have verify. They're two completely different things. One precludes the other. So what I want to talk to you about today is this notion of trust, but it's important to realize that I'm not talking about that kind of trust. Maria talked a lot about that kind of trust, which is the quality, this trust that we associate to the quality of a relationship, which we build with people over time. Because that's a little bit more complex, and there's also a certain morality associated with it. Like, we feel like we should trust other people. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about cold, hard strategy here. Trust is something you either execute or not. It's on or off. There's no right or wrong. There are benefits and costs. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is this cost-benefit analysis between trust and strategy and verify, and these options that we have. And I hope by the end of this talk, you got to forgive some of the fonts here. Oh, we're looking at different things. Okay. So what we're going to find out is by the end of this talk, what is the choice that we should be making much more often, particularly in a world where speed and innovation matter more than ever. So I want to talk about trust first. So trust is what we call a high variance strategy. So what that means is it's high risk. It's kind of beyond our control. Sometimes we get amazing results. Sometimes we get abysmal results. So the perfect example is of a relationship. So sometimes in a high trust relationship, when both partners are exercising high trust fully and openly, you get amazing results. You get the type of intimacy and fulfillment that people can only dream about. But sometimes when you exercise high amounts of trust, you get lots of pain. You get cheating. You get heartbreak. You get being chased around the room with a shotgun. These are all consequences of trust, and Maria talked very eloquently about them. Then you have verify. Verify is completely different behavior. What it is, it's a low variance thing, right? So it normalizes results. Sometimes you're probably going to limit the upside. You're probably not going to get amazing results, but you also limit the downside. The potential mistakes aren't as bad. So this is, I don't know if you know about this, Maria, it's trackapartner.com. So for $50 a month, you and your partner can exchange GPS devices, and you can know exactly where they are at any given moment, in any given second, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is a great strategy if you want to prevent cheating, lying, those types of things. Horrible strategy if you want a relationship that leads to fulfillment. Right? But it works. It probably won't give you a great relationship, but it probably won't be that bad either. So I don't mean to knock verify, because there's a lot of utility to verify. It's an incredibly useful thing, particularly when the cost of failure is high. When a potential mistake can mean catastrophe, verify is often a very useful and important behavior. What we have to realize, though, is that we make a sacrifice. What we sacrifice is speed and innovation. So there's this, as a part of the INF treaty, to go back to that for a second, there was something that happened, right? We had teams, both the Americans and the Soviets, in each other's countries. We installed them to inspect thoroughly to make sure we were both following through on our agreements. It turns out we weren't particularly concerned at how innovative the Russians were in dismantling their nuclear weapons. We just wanted to make sure they did it. So verify was a good idea. We also didn't care how long it took or how fast they did it, right? Because time and cost were pale in comparison compared to the amount of catastrophe that nuclear war would have presented us, right? So verify was good in that case. It's the same reason why Bank of America's online banking center will log you out of their website every 15 seconds. It's the most frustrating thing in the world. But you want that. You want that. Because Bank of America doesn't care about speed. What they care about is safety. They want to make sure they avoid the security threats. Verify is good in that case. It's the reason why we have co-pilots in the cockpit, right? Because we don't care how fancy the maneuvering of the pilot is. We don't care how innovative they are. We just want to make sure they take us safely to our destination, and occasionally, maybe just once in a while, do it on time. So these are some of the cases where verify means so much because speed and innovation aren't a big deal. We don't really need them. But what happens when speed and innovation do matter? Well, then we have a big problem. Because what verify does is it hurts speed. So in track and field, they have this expression which is called no looking. So if you're on a relay team and they're training you on how to receive a baton, what they tell you, and it's really important, is you can't look back at the person who's handing you the baton, right? Because what happens is if you look backwards and you try to make sure the person is putting in your hand, which is a pretty human reaction, you lose speed. You lose time. Those precious seconds will make you lose the race. So they tell you not to look. This is incredibly important. There's a 26-year-old Army captain who's stationed on a small field base on the border of Afghanistan and Pakistan right now. He's got full authority to order joint fire, both artillery and air. 26-year-old young man got full authority without permission from his boss to order joint fire. 30 years ago, this would have been crazy. They would have looked at him like he would have been court-martialed if he did that. What has changed? Everything has changed. His enemy is decentralized. The Taliban can come at him in any moment from any direction. He doesn't have time to wait for his commanders to have a meeting to tell him what to do. So what he does is he orders the fire. So what the other thing about, I think I'm lost here. Okay, so here we go. So speed is one problem, right? Verify kills speed, but the other big problem is that verify kills creativity, and that's what I want to talk about next. So recently I've been watching a lot of HGTV. Yeah, I know. I think I'm depressed or something. I don't know. So my favorite show is a show called Color Splash with David Bromstead. And David Bromstead is an artist. I don't know if anybody have you ever seen this. So you've seen it before. And this guy, he works miracles. He'll take a home that looks like this or a room that looks like this, and he'll turn it into a room that looks like this. And David makes miracles happen, but he makes it look so simple because through the magic of television, it only takes him 22 minutes. But it's not that easy. This is a work of art. And it takes him and his team to engage in the entire full creative process in order to make sure this happens. And what he has to do is he has to create an environment for himself and conditions around him that lend themselves to this artistic process. So what do I mean? So David has a rule, which is no looking. If you're the homeowners, on day one you pack your bags and you leave, and you don't come back until the last day, the day of the reveal. Now, if you're a homeowner, this could be a little painful, because even though you have David Bromstead in your corner, it's still your home. You want to know what's going on. You want to keep track of things. But there's a real reason why this occurs, right? Because before the room looks like this, the room at one point looks like this. And David understands that if the client is to see this, there's two potential problems. The first one is pretty obvious. If they see the room looking like this, they might freak out and fire David. The second problem is more subtle, though. It's more understated, and I think it's even more important, which is that if the artist knows that there's going to be an observer here, that the client is going to see this, they're compelled to change this. They're compelled to make this look better. Right? They're compelled to alter their process, to make something that's not display ready, display ready. And what we all know is that creativity is a destructive process. We all know this. Anybody who's ever done something creative before knows that it never works like this. It never is a straight line. I can guarantee you Jane's eggs did not look like that on day 2. It probably was until day 30 that they looked like that magnificent. Because creativity looks more like this, right? There's ups and downs, there's highs and lows, there's peaks and there's valleys. And it's a messy thing. And the problem is, if you try to make the lows not as low, right, then you can't make the highs as high, right? Because it takes absolute lows for absolute highs. So Dave Matthews, who I think is one of the great songwriters of our time, has this quote, which I love. It's, once you stop the painting and show it to somebody else, it no longer belongs to you. I think this is why some of the great artists of our times, think of great writers and painters, have gone into solitude to do their work, have rented a cabin in the woods and done it, because they knew as soon as somebody observes it, it doesn't belong to them anymore. It changes the process, and we have to be careful of that every day. So sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Leonardo da Vinci was forced to show up to daily status meetings. Like, how would that have affected his work? To report every single day and asked to defend every single one of his decisions. Would we have ended up with something as magnificent as the Last Supper? I'm not sure we would have. But why is it that we only give this autonomy of art to these dead prima donna painters, right? There are other artists amongst us, right? What about programmers? How about call center technicians? What about lawyers? How is their work any less creative? Why do they deserve any less autonomy to be able to engage in the full creative process without the hindrance of constant observation? I think this is changing. And I think we all know this is changing. It's why we're in the room today, because the world is changing. The cost of failure, everywhere we look, is going dramatically down. In a digital world, the cost of bits and atoms is trivial compared to the cost of bricks and steel. Most of the people in this room probably spend most of your day either on the computer or on the internet doing your knowledge work. And the mistakes you make, the failures you have, aren't nearly as costly as if you worked in a 1930s factory. Right? And Verify, which was so good at limiting the risk, limiting downside, the payoff isn't as good when the downside isn't that great. And then you have the premium for speed and innovation, right? Speed and innovation is just so much more important these days. In a world dominated by Google, there can only be 10 winners in any category. And I'm going to argue 5 above the fold, because if I have to scroll down to find you or go to page 2, you're invisible to me. It's only the art, it's only the game-changing innovations that rise to the top and eventually get noticed. As my dear friend Seth Godin will tell you, in revolutionary times which we are in, the number of decisions that need to be made on a daily basis goes up geometrically. And we need speed for that, right? Because if we can't ship it out the door, if we can't get it to the marketplace on time, it's not an innovation. And so, like it or not, I think what innovation has become is a giant race. In a world that is hyper-connected and hyper-competitive, we don't have a choice anymore. It just moves too fast. It's too competitive. So I think this paradigm of trust but verify is just far outdated. Not only is it a ridiculous notion, it's just incompatible with our new world. Right? In a world where we need artistic merits, where we need creativity to drive the type of innovation that wins these days, I don't think this works anymore. I think we need to trust fully without verify. Now, in the long run, this is incredibly difficult. I'm not making any bones about it, right? I mean, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to re-engineer systems, rethink processes, change cultures to allow managers and their teams to give each other more autonomy. I understand this is going to be difficult. But in the short run, it's not that difficult. Because like I said in the beginning, in any given moment, in any given situation, most of you are confronted with a choice. Trust or verify. Choose wisely. Thank you.